Hi, and welcome to my first kind of draw with me video. As you can see, I've already kind of started here. And as you know from the thumbnail, I'm doing a Sunday fish sketch. And for the last year, I've been drawing Pokemon fish. You can check it out on my Instagram, which will be linked below if you want to see my previous ones. This is number 32 of my goal of completing 52 of them this year. I'm doing Basculin today in its two forms. So I'm just going to go through kind of the process, and you'll be able to see me start a watercolor painting and finish it. So this is really sped up. The total amount of time that I spent on this when I was looking at the video clips was almost an hour for all of it, and that's with like stitching all the clips together. So I probably spent about an hour and a half on this today, and we've shortened it down to under 10 minutes. So just some really quick sketching, trying to get the form, figure out what it looks like, and then here I'm actually figuring out my composition because I've gotten some ideas of what the fish actually looks like and its anatomy. So slow it down just a little bit here so you can kind of see my process for coming up with my composition. And I wanted to do the two forms together, and the red form, the lower one there, I've actually used the form from the Pokédex, so it's based pretty much entirely on the anatomy presented there. The one on the top I'm a little bit more kind of proud of because I actually studied the blue form and came up with that pose myself. In the beginning you can see me going back and forth to my phone to look at a bunch of different pictures to kind of see where things are supposed to be in the general shape. And yay, my favorite thing of wrinkling the paper while erasing. So going back and forth on the form and kind of just figuring out where things go, where they belong, and then using that general fish shape to kind of come up with a pose on my own. I really like the pose that the red fish is always depicted in because it's a little more fluid, it has more movement to it, where the blue fish is always just kind of like put in this like flat sideways pose. You can see that sketch sticking off to the left there from the Pokédex. So now that I've got the sketch, I'm going to transfer it using my Lightbox. Well, it looks really clear here on the screen. Unfortunately, when I was looking at it myself, I couldn't see it very well because my lines were so dark. I was using a 2B pencil to put in the lines, so it's pretty dark and it was hard to see kind of where my actual lines I wanted to use were. So just going over it in Sharpie so that you can, well, I can see it through the watercolor paper to get a good idea of where I want things to be, and then erasing some of those like nonsense lines that I didn't really need anymore. So that kind of makes it much more clearer. And then going over it with an F pencil, which you can't see because you'll see later when I put the pencil down, my dog, when he was a puppy quite a few years ago, chewed the end of this pencil. So yeah, even though I tried to show that it was an F pencil, there's no way to tell. So it's really light here. So I don't know how well you'll be able to see the lines, but it was light enough that I'd be able to see them and be able to cover them with paint. So here for the colors of the fish, I'm using a bit of Winsor and Newton Hooker's Green Dark mixed with some De La Rowney Sap Green to make this nice deep green color that I used here for the body of the fish. So this is actual real time here, where just to kind of get a feel of what the color looks like as it lays down, and this is how slow I actually paint. So keeping everything wet and trying to make sure that everything blends smoothly, but I tend to go pretty slow so that I stay inside of those lines. I don't like lining before I paint, I like to line after with projects like these because I tend to use pretty dark layers. And so sometimes with certain pens that can kind of cover it a little bit or give it almost like a chalky look because a lot of my paints are pretty old. I just do this as a hobby, so I haven't invested in like nice paints. These Winsor Newton ones I really like, and they're not as chalky as some of my older ones, but a friend gave them to me when she moved, so I haven't invested in any of my own except for like the black that I'm going to use here in a little bit. So I'm just kind of like using things until they run out or just become unusable. So the sap green from the Rowney kit that I have, I think that kit is probably, those paints are maybe 15 years old. I'm pretty sure I got them when I was in high school. So some of them are a bit chalky, and so when you go over black, they tend to every now and then just kind of, you almost can't see the lines as well through it. They're not as crisp. Another thing is I don't use it for this video, but for my other watercolor Pokemon paintings, I use a gel roller barrel, a zebra, can't remember what it's called, but it's a zebra gel pen, and it's not waterproof. So before I got these new STA pigment liners, which are a really good deal, and I recommend them on Amazon because they're waterproof, and they were really cheap for the whole set. So I'm using these this time, so I could have outlined first, but normally I'll use the gel pen because I really like the way that it looks with these more cartoony type drawings. And it's not waterproof, so I have to go over the paintings after the fact. This also does allow me to fix like minor mistakes and things, because even though it's only like it's an hour, it's a quicker painting, and so I don't like to spend a whole lot of time, because this is something that I'm trying to do every Sunday, just as a kind of a way to keep in the habit of painting, and so they're not something that I spend a whole lot of time on, so I tend to make mistakes sometimes, and having like doing the line art at the end allows me to fix it. So here for the black on the fish, I'm using some black just from Cass Art, a local art shop here in the UK, that's mixed with a bit of the Winsor and Newton phthalo blue, so that it's not quite just solid black. I really like giving black like a blue hint and not making it just a solid color, or solid black pigment. So just coloring in the black there on both of the fish. And I did realize when I was looking at my sketches in the beginning that the blue fish on top is supposed to have these black circles along its side, and I completely forgot about them. And I drew them in my original sketch so that I would remember to do them, and then when I was transferring the sketch I just didn't, and yeah, I just completely forgot. So I think some of that's, I'm starting to come down with a cold today. I've just finished my thesis, so I have like thesis brain, and honestly remembering things is hard right now. So I completely missed out on those, so it's not 100% accurate, but I do like the way that it turned out. This is a pretty simple one. I didn't do a background, I just kind of filled it in. So this red is just the straight red, what is it? It's just cadmium red deep hue, the Winsor Newton, and this is just the regular shade. There might be a little bit of black still on my paintbrush in it, so it's a little darker. And just using that for the stripe on the red fish. The stripe on the blue fish is the phthalo blue, again mixed with a little bit of ceruleum from my Rowney kit. That's the big glob in my blue tray, because it's again that really old kit, and it's kind of drying out, so it's a little chalky, but it's still my favorite, like it's my favorite blue shade, so I tend to use it quite a bit even though it's a little chalky, because for this type of painting, again, these are really simple little fun paintings. I don't worry about them being perfect. So just doing some shadows here on the fins with some of that black watered way down, just so that there's a little bit of depth to the fish, and then just kind of adding that to both of them. I think the fun thing about these is that it's pretty easy to play with just simple shadows, which is something I don't normally do. I was taught to draw in like really kind of realistic style, so everything was always like super shaded and never doing this like cell shading type thing. So I'm just going to start lining it here in a second. So this is just what it looks like before it's lined. And started with the 0.1, but decided I wanted to use a 0.2 pen instead, just because it's a little bit thicker and I could get kind of a little darker line there and kind of fix some of my mistakes a little bit better. So again, this is speeded up. I think this is only speeded up 2 times. So the lining I tend to do a little bit quicker, which is kind of why I like that gel pen, is it tends to just roll a lot smoother when I'm wanting to do quick lines. And there is a point here where I actually smudge this, and I'm pretty upset about it because this is the first time these are smudged on me, so I should have just given it a little bit longer. You can see just below that, that kind of back fin there that just kind of smudged it a little, but yeah, what can I do? So just finishing up all the lining, adding in all the details, and I'll notice after I'm done with this, you'll notice I go back with the paintbrush and just fill in some of the little spots. Like there's a little bit of white around the eye, there's a little bit of white between the body of the redfish and its tail that I need to be filled in with black. The same with the bluefish, there's a little bit of black that needs to be filled in on its tail. But I really like lining these Pokemon fish drawings because it's just so satisfying to actually like put the lines down and see it actually look like a finished piece, and have it. I just really like the way that watercolor tends to look for these guys. It's been probably my fun, like the most fun I've had doing a project so far with watercolor is this series, which was just a fun little thing that I wanted to do because I knew like coming into my final year of my thesis, doing a full thing wasn't gonna work. So yeah, that's my whole painting, and I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.